the unions are split. There is a lot of concern we're picking up in private amongst sort of, for want of a better word, the people behind the bond markets, who, they are worried that, the signal that having Ed Miliband in the Treasury shows is that, possibly Rachel Reeves's fiscal rules will go. I think some of those concerns are being made in private to Team Burnham. You talk to people around the presumptive Prime Minister, and they say he genuinely, at this stage, has not made up his mind.
Oliver Wright is now with us, the policy editor of The Times. Hi to you, Ollie.
Hello.
Hi. So, look, what is going on? I say this is an impossible question to answer by definition. I very nearly asked you, what's going on behind the locked doors? Who are they going to appoint? What are they going to do to policy? And you can't, obviously, answer all of that. But it is all going on. It's all going on pretty rapidly. And so much of what people are guessing about and gossiping about has to do with the office of the Chancellor, especially the question, Ed Miliband, is he going to be the Chancellor to Andy Burnham, or is it going to be someone else? Because that's going to be such a pointer to the shape, the direction, or the definition of the Burnham administration.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And the battle over the chancellorship is not actually just going on behind closed doors. It's going on in public now as well. You've seen today a real split in the union movement over this appointment. You've had Unite and the GMB both coming out and making pretty clear that they are, vehemently opposed to the idea of Chancellor Ed Miliband. Both those unions have had run-ins with him in his current role as Energy Secretary, particularly over the issue of North Sea oil and gas, and whether or not the government should, create a more favourable tax regime, whether they should allow for more drilling. So on the one side, you've got those two unions that are opposed, and then on the other side, you've got Unison, the other big Labour supporting union. Its General Secretary has just come out and said that they are backing Miliband for Chancellor. So, the unions are split. There is a lot of concern we're picking up in private amongst sort of, for want of a better word, the people behind the bond markets, who, they are worried that, the signal that having Ed Miliband in the Treasury shows is that, possibly Rachel Reeves's fiscal rules will go. I think some of those concerns are being made in private to Team Burnham. You talk to people around the presumptive Prime Minister, and they say he genuinely, at this stage, has not made up his mind. But it's a real problem because, as you say, it will set the direction of his government.
Yeah, and I guess maybe we should hope that Andy Burnham not making up his mind on such a fundamental question reflects, a deep period of reflection and not indecision, because it is just so fundamental. And it's not just business on one side who are in alliance in some ways with some in the trade union movement. It is in the Labour Party too, because there are MPs who will also be dismayed to see Ed Miliband walk into number 11.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. And I mean, you're talking about polling. We've got some polling in the paper tomorrow that shows that people do know who Ed Miliband is, and he is quite a polarising figure. And I think it'd be fair to say that opinions are divided on whether it would be a good appointment or not.
Yeah, I mean the polling that I've seen from previously has his recognition level up touching 100%. And you've got around in all the polls, in all age groups that I've seen, you've got about half of people saying they don't think much of Ed Miliband. That's not a great place to start.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's worth sort of emphasising, it's kind of obvious, but that relationship between a Prime Minister and their Chancellor is absolutely crucial. You've seen it time and time again that when, number 11 and number 10 diverge on issues, it gums up the entirety of government. Someone put it to me that, if you're sitting in number 10, you really don't have the capacity to sort of enact your agenda unless you've got the Treasury acting as the driving force behind that.
Yes.
So that you need someone that is absolutely loyal to you, is on your agenda, and is going to, carry your writ through all the various different government departments. So, there's this question mark over, Wes Streeting, whether he would be a sort of more appealing Chancellor. But others say, well, the last thing you want is to have someone in that post who has leadership ambitions of their own.
And we've got plenty of examples in recent history of the dangers of the Prime Minister and the Chancellor not seeing eye to eye.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, really, if you think about it, I mean, the last sort of proper partnership, as it were, was probably David Cameron and George Osborne. I mean, ever since then, there have been tensions between, chancellors and prime ministers. You think about Theresa May and Philip Hammond; they didn't see eye to eye on very much. Obviously, Boris Johnson and Rishi Sunak. That started off well, but pretty quickly deteriorated. Even Rishi Sunak and Jeremy Hunt, there were some tensions there, partly because Rishi Sunak felt that in a polite way he knew better. So it is a tremendously tricky appointment, and there isn't a sort of absolute natural Burnham ally who would fit into that role.
Yeah, I see it suggested that Andy Burnham and Ed Miliband are closer together, and politically as well as personally, than most people, or many people at least, might imagine. But then I look at the guy who seems to be ready to become Chief of Staff in Number 10 Downing Street, James Pienaar, who is always identified as a Blairite, and not, maybe close personally again to Ed Miliband, but not so politically.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. He was always seen as a Blairite, and indeed, he comes into that role in Number 10 through a company called Flint Global, whose job it is really to represent large businesses to the government. So he will be well aware of what business fears, what business want, what business thinks. And I do think, that, for all the talk of a sort of radical policy agenda, Burnham will not want his first acts to be to sort of alienate the business community and, importantly, alienate the markets. This trust provides a fairly recent example of what can happen if you go in and do the wrong things quickly.
And we're going to be watching this big speech of Burnham, which I think is scheduled for Monday, is an economic direction speech, a broad, where's Andy Burnham heading kind of speech. I don't know how detailed it's going to be. In the meantime, all we have is sort of shreds and straws of hints from people like Lord O'Neill, Jim O'Neill, who seems to be open to the idea of more borrowing under different headings, and you've been writing interestingly, Ollie, about maybe greater use of wealth taxes, including capital gains. Yeah,
I mean, there is definitely a group around Burnham who do want to make more use of wealth taxes. Jim O'Neill is not one of them. He, of course, is a former Goldman Sachs banker, and he is pretty clear that he thinks wealth taxes would be a bad idea for several reasons. He says, firstly, they're extremely easy to avoid. You just don't sell your asset and wait for things to change. And secondly, he says it discourages investment, particularly in sort of UK startups. He says, most investment is inherently risky. A lot of it doesn't pay off. And the last thing you want to do is use the tax system to disincentivize people from putting money into, companies that could actually, be the sort of spur for growth in the longer term. Interestingly, we're writing about this tomorrow, there's some analysis that HMRC has done which showed that if you significantly raised capital gains tax, actually the Treasury could end up losing money because people would delay selling their assets.
This is fascinating stuff, Ollie. Let's keep in touch as the path becomes clear, or at least clearer, in front of us. Ollie Wright there, the policy editor of The Times.